Two of the biggest hitters in budget TWS are without question CMF and Realme. In this video we're going to compare their two newest releases, the Buds 2 Plus and Buds Air 7 Pro respectively, and see how they fare alongside other popular sub $100 sets on the market. Coming up, you're going to get the usual ReganCipher blend of objective tests and measurements, where you're going to get to hear what each set of buds sounds like, courtesy of a binaural sound sample and an ANC sample as well, so you can hear how they perform in a busy coffee shop. We've got call tests in a variety of busy indoor and outdoor scenes. There's also fit, comfort and stability tests when using the buds for exercise, and we'll look at the measurements for both tuning with their frequency response and sound quality with their harmonic distortion. And looking at the specs first, the Realme, you've got a dual driver, dual DAC setup here, and it supports high-res audio through the LHDC codec only. The feature set, which we'll go into later, includes AI Translation and looks pretty good considering the price of around £60. The CMF only have a 12mm single liquid crystal driver, but they do support the more widely used LDAC codec. As you know, this doesn't carry too much weight with me because it's all about the driver performance and the tuning, which we'll go into a little later on. But let's start with the active noise cancellation, where there is a very clear winner. Realme are finally delivering good ANC in their flagship product, as you're going to hear in the following sample. That coffee shop scene gave you a pretty clear indication of the strengths and weaknesses of each of these buds when it comes to ANC. The CMF softened voices and mid-frequency sounds surprisingly well, but was weaker than I expected on those lower rumbles. The Realme, on the other hand, were not so good at voices, but very strong on low rumbling sounds, so ideal if you want to use a set on the daily commute, if you're using public transport, trains, buses, etc. Since the average scene mostly consists of lower frequency sounds, it skews the results a little bit, but as you can see, the Buds Air 7 Pro reduces around 10 dB extra noise compared with the CMF Buds 2 Plus. Both of these products still fall some way short of the leader in this field, sub $100, the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC. Both products give you 3 ANC strength settings as well as an adaptive mode, but the Realme gives you an additional wind noise reduction mode, which actually works really well. The only problem with this is you have to remember to toggle it off when there's no wind in the scene, because it will randomly cut the ANC out, something I found a little bit annoying. Transparency mode on both of these models is certainly serviceable without hitting the heights of something like Apple's AirPods Pro 2. The CMF lets slightly more noise through, but at the expense of a bit of white noise. They're probably better suited for cycling or instances where you need to hear all of your surroundings. Realme's doesn't let quite as much through. It isolates certain sounds, so it's better suited if you're walking around and you bump into someone that you want to speak to. They also have an enhanced voices toggle, which improves this even more. With Realme as well, there's an oddity when it comes to the transparency mode. I read somewhere that if you remove one of the buds from your ear, it will sense it and automatically switch you into transparency mode. I got this to work for all of about 10 minutes. Since then, I can't get it to work. I've no idea if it's a problem with my buds or if it's just limited to the global version, but if you see this in their documentation, I can't vouch for it working. Both sets allow you to manually switch from ANC on or off to transparency mode on a call without cutting your caller off. And call performance is exactly what we're going to test next, with a few real life call samples here in different busy locations.
So first up, we're testing how each of these buds sounds when you're on a call on the daily commute, where perhaps you're passing through a busy commuter station, maybe underground or train, and you've got lots of different frequency sounds complicating your call. That was the Realme Buds Air 7 Pro, just as we get to the top of the escalator and you've got loads of wind coming through into the scene. So this is how the CMF Buds 2 Plus sound by comparison in the same underground stations on the same escalator in exactly the same scene with that same collection of sounds and noises that can complicate how clearly your voice comes across on a call. When you're on a daily commute, typically you'll have to traverse both indoor and outdoor scene. And typically as well, earbuds tend to perform differently outdoors compared with indoors. Here, I'm crossing London Bridge, got plenty of wind coming through. I've got traffic noise coming through as well. So it's going to give you a clearer idea of how the Realme are going to perform in these kind of scenes instead. Having waited long enough for enough wind and enough traffic noise to come through into the scene, as well as people talking around me, this is how the CMF buds sound in that same sort of scene, dealing with the same sort of challenges that you're going to face if you're making or taking a call on the daily commute, when nipping between stations or maybe exiting the station and heading to work, school or college. And this time we're testing the CMF buds to learn how they perform on your calls in a busy indoor scene and busy coffee shop here on the weekend. And it's those usual mixture of sounds that are complicating your call. This is the same scene that I test all my TWS in, mixture of listeners making coffee inside, conversations and distinct chatter, and also music playing through the stereo speakers. So if you're using them in a busy indoor scene, this is how you can expect them to perform. Now this time we're testing the Realme Buds Air 7 Pro, and how they perform in the very same scene, although there's the addition of some crying or screeching or something going on in the background just to complicate it even further. So it's a usual mixture of lots of different frequency sounds that we're testing out here and seeing how clear your voice comes through when you're on this kind of call in this kind of scene.
As you heard, both of these buds perform okay on calls, although again the Realme shade it over the CMF. In that coffee shop scene in particular, you heard that the noise reduction algorithm was just trying too hard and it lost your own voice at times with some of my words cutting out. Whilst the Realme is better, I feel like it's gone backwards a little bit from the Buds Air 6 Pro, which were probably my pick of budget buds when it comes to calls, and they fall way behind the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 4, currently the leader at any price point when it comes to making and taking calls. Now before we dive into the audio and listen to the sound samples, let's take a look at the usability, starting with the case. Realme's now semi-metallic case is a massive improvement over the one they used on the Buds Air 5 and 6 Pro. It may look like they've swiped the case from OnePlus with their Buds 3, but this one is much more hefty and slightly bigger. The durability looks good given this has been kicking around in the bottom of my bag for the last month without any signs of markings on the front or back. These slogans that they've put on the back and the inside of the case are a little tacky though. The same can't be said of the CMF case, which is much more elegant, although it's disappointing that the jog wheel is purely cosmetic on this one. The case on the inside has these little shoulders keeping the buds in position, which I think looks and works really well. Both are very portable, with the CMF being more square than the rectangular, flatter Realme. The buds themselves represent a dramatic redesign from the Buds Air 5 and 6 Pro. They share a similar shell to that of the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 4 with a very short rectangular stem. The insertion depth is, like the 5 and 6 Pro, shallow though, so if you had problems with those staying in your ear, you might suffer the same fate here. Personally, I found them more secure and more comfortable than those previous models though. Not only did they stay in my ears well even when I was sweating, doing weights and cardio, but they also passed the 100 jumping jacks test where they didn't even feel at any point like they were going to fall out, something that the Buds Air 5 and 6 Pro didn't manage, topping out at around 61 reps. For my ears at least, this definitely gets a thumbs up for stability. The only minor annoyance being that the controls are situated a little bit further down the stem and wouldn't always activate. Once you get used to the position of the sensors, the controls work really well though, and you get loads of customization in the Realme Link app. They have wear detection and auto answer, which you can toggle on and off. There's swipe control for the volume that you can't toggle on and off, and everything else you can pretty much change, including which active noise cancellation mode to toggle through when you hold the left bud down. The translation feature is unfortunately, as we suspected, a total gimmick. There's two modes, face-to-face and live. Live is where you keep the earbuds in your ears and it just tries to pick up on what's being said around you, but I found this quite slow and not especially accurate. Face-to-face translates whatever you're saying or whoever's talking into the earbud and then presents the translated version on the other side of the orientation of the screen so both of you can read it at the same time. Whilst the idea is good, it doesn't really work well and it doesn't auto-detect language either, To be honest, you're better off sticking with a dedicated app like DeepL. The CMF buds are much more simplistic in their design. The stems are a little bit longer and thinner than the Realme, and you can certainly feel a difference in terms of the fit. I found the CMF to be much more comfortable, certainly for prolonged use. Hardly felt like they were there, and that perhaps goes some way towards explaining the less than stellar noise isolation. They're IP55 sweat and water resistant, so fine for using in the gym, but beware because at the cost of comfort is stability. They didn't get through the jumping jacks test, falling out after 61, which puts them amongst the poorest performers, for my ears at least, when it comes to in-ear designs. The touch controls here aren't great either, with a noticeable amount of lag. As with the Realme, you've got quite a bit of customization in the Nothing app, where you can change double tap, triple tap, and tap and hold. And whilst there's no swipe control, you can control the volume with double tap and hold, something I ended up switching off. You can specify which noise cancellation modes are active when you cycle through them, same as the Realme, and they match the Realme features of in-ear detection and the ability to toggle it on and off, a Find My Earbuds mode, and an ear tip fit test. And like the Realme, you get multi-point as well as a device list, which is always good to see with these budget buds. For gamers, both of these devices have a low latency mode, and it does improve performance slightly, with the Realme just about shading it but not noticeably. Battery life is similarly close, although CMF take the cake here, giving you just over 10 hours playback with ANC off and using the AAC codec. Switch on ANC and both of these buds give you between 5.5 and 6 hours. Realme performs slightly better here and when you're using high-res codecs as well, but both give you a very credible single-use playback. Neither product has wireless charging, but both have quick charge. Plug the case in for 10 minutes and you'll get up to 10 hours playback with the Realme and up to 8.5 with the CMF, both very respectable. Last but not least, the sound, and as promised, that binaural sample of each of these buds so you can hear what these sound like for yourself. Remember, it's always better to listen to these with your headphones on. So only a short clip there, but long enough for us to discern the audio characteristics of each of these buds. With the Realme, it was all about the energy. Whilst they do have a fair bit of shimmer to the trebles, vocals and instruments in the mid-range generally play second fiddle to bass impact, energy and slam. This sound profile works well with EDM, techno and hip-hop, but for more musical and vocal-centric genres you might find yourself needing to reach for the EQ. Here's the measurements, which will be a useful guide towards giving you a more balanced sound. Reducing the bass between 30 and 50 Hz by 1 to 2 dB depending on your preference will make all the difference. Adding a gentle uplift between 1 and 3K will help those vocals pop a little bit too. The Buds Air 7 Pro can be pushed quite hard when it comes to the EQ due to the quality of the drivers that are used here with very low distortion. If you look at the THD max and minimum columns here, you'll see that at 120 dB there's minimal distortion throughout the frequency range. The CMF sample that you heard was using the default pop preset with ultra bass switched off. Even in that configuration, they're still quite bassy out of the box, although it didn't appear as bassy on the sample due to that elevated upper mid-range. The default sound is slightly more open than the Realme, although the imaging isn't as precise. Harmonic distortion on the CMF is higher than on the Realme, particularly in the lower frequencies. The single dynamic driver performs pretty well though compared to some of its similarly priced peers around it. With that in mind, both of these sets of buds give you lots of opportunities to tweak the sound to your liking. Both have a fixed spatial audio mode and both are actually fairly usable. Don't expect Apple levels of performance, but it's still definitely noticeable compared with the standard sound. CMF's Nothing app gives you an ultra bass slider of between 0 and 5, whilst Realme give you a dynamic audio of plus or minus 5 with lower, medium and high frequencies if you want a quick and dirty adjustment. Both of these models have set presets as well as a custom EQ mode. I didn't particularly like any of the presets on the Realme because deep bass and clear bass just pump the bass even harder, while 7A just thins it out too much. CMF have an extra preset, and again, most of these are bass focused. Classical and enhanced vocal thin out the note weight, whilst rock is the deep bass equivalent. Both models have a limited custom EQ within their app. If you want more granular control and you're an Android user, you might want to turn to Wavelet. Both of these models also have a personalized hearing test where it supposedly scans your ear canal, although in reality it's just playing you a bunch of different frequency sounds and judging how responsive you are to each. Since the Nothing app uses the Mimi module, which I talked about in the Creative Orvana Mimi review, I was quite hopeful about the accuracy of it, but actually it didn't really produce anything usable, whereas the Realme gave me a tangible improvement. Years of DJing in noisy clubs and festivals unfortunately put paid to my left queuing ear, hence the disparity that you see in the results, so these features are always quite useful. Looking back at the league table, we can see that both of these buds have got their merits. I consider anything over 78 and above really to be perfectly passable when it comes to listening to music for everyday use. The Realme's advantages over the CMF are, as we said really, slightly better imaging and less distortion in those lower frequencies. EQ these to the same frequency response and you will notice a slight improvement in the Realme, but it isn't by orders of magnitude. Zooming back out and looking at the package as a whole, both of these buds are good quality options in that sub 100 category. The CMF are great value for money, around £55. They're readily available in the UK, EU and US. And they're super comfortable with a very nice, easy to use app and lots of features. They fall short of being an outright recommendation though due to the slightly weaker than expected ANC, which falls behind the likes of Soundcore Liberty 4 NC, Earphone Air Pro 4, and the Realme Buds Air 7 Pro. They don't stay in my ears particularly well for exercise, although your mileage may vary, and there's a few minor quibbles like the inability to customize volume control and limited custom EQ. The Realme aren't as readily available here in the UK at least, but are a product I'd be more inclined to recommend. Realme have listened to all the feedback with their previous releases and improved it with a better case and bud design. The ANC is impressive, transparency commendable, and the sound is good, but it does take a little bit of work with the EQ to nullify that boosted bass. These are solid all-rounders that you might want to consider, but don't buy it on the basis of the AI translation, which is a gimmick. What did you think of this comparison between the Realme and the CMF? Do leave your comments in the comments section below. Thanks for persevering with me. I know it's been a little while, but hopefully it was worth the wait. Do give the video a like if you found it useful, enjoyed it both or neither, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. For now, it's ReganCipher, signing off.